And if you can sleep at night knowing that you are participating in the erasure of women, the harms to women and children, and the removal of healthy body parts, well, then don't join us.
Women are currently being erased in culture, and I want to amplify their voices and share their stories. Hey everyone, welcome to This is a Woman podcast. This week I have Erin Friday on, and we had a phenomenal conversation. She'll actually be this week and next week. It's going to be a two-parter. She is a licensed attorney here in the state of California, as well as she's co-lead of Our Duty. It's a group that helps parents that have children that are stuck in this gender ideology. So go ahead and check out Our Duty online to learn more about them, as well as she is a parent that had, as she says, a gender fairy visit her home. And she helped get her daughter out of the gender ideology and helped get her daughter out of thinking that she was a boy. So Erin has phenomenal information. In this episode, you're going to hear her dive into how we even got to where we're at today, especially here in California, who kind of started this whole gender ideology and the laws in California, the processes that got here. We're going to talk about something that you don't hear often, but the truth about the suicide rate with trans children. Are they more suicidal after they transition, or are they more suicidal if they don't transition? Well, you'll hear from Erin on that. So it's great. And then tune back in next Monday, because then she's going to share her personal story about how she got her daughter out of believing a lie, and how you can also help your kids if they're stuck in the same lie. So on that note, hello, Erin. We are so grateful to have you here today, and I know the listeners are going to learn so much from you. And we're just beyond thankful for everything you're doing to protect women and to protect children here in California.
Well, I'm pleased to be here, and you're doing the same work. So I'm proud to be with you, standing with you on a podcast with you.
Yes.
You're amazing.
Well, thank you. And, for everyone listening, Erin, I already kind of gave you all a briefing about who Erin is and the amazing work she's doing, but she gave a wonderful presentation at an event that we were both at a couple of weeks ago about how we got here in California to this trans ideology and erasing what a woman is. So, Erin, I just want to kind of hand it over to you and break it down for the listeners.
Sure, and I'm going to go back a little farther from the talking points from the speech, but this movement, this transgender movement, has its genesis really in the 1950s. So we're going back years and years. And if anybody wants to read about it, there's actually a really good book. It's called As Nature Made Him. And this is all about John Money. And he was actually one of the forefathers to start transgenderism and its popular movement. He and Kinsey were part of this, and Foucault. So if people ever want to go back in time and actually see, where did gender identity come from? It came from John Money. And he was a researcher who experimented on a twin boy who had his genitals burned off with a bad circumcision. And he decided to experiment on this kid and tell the parents to raise this male as a female, and that gender identity trumps biological reality. And he became quite famous, and he lied about the results of his experiment on this young boy. And I remember even in college with my Psych 101 class that I read about this, and I read about it being a great success, that nature is trumped by nurture, and that's just a falsehood. So that's how we really got to this gender identity idea, this belief that there's some kind of essence in all of us that is different from biology. moving forward to how we got here in California and how we started to get all of these bills and laws that actually codify the idea that we all have gender essence, or this feeling that, again, is more important than biology. We have to go back to a woman named Sheila Kuehl. And Sheila Kuehl was the first out lesbian, or actually gay person, in the California State Assembly. And I would have lauded her. I've been like, that's great. Inclusion, equity, anti-discrimination, and go woman. But I can't. And I know that she knows what she actually did, and the train that she put us on, she did purposefully. So this woman, Sheila Kuehl, she started her life out as a TV star. She was actually an actress, and she played the I think it was I Am Dobie, a very old 1950s, and she was the smart girl, not the most beautiful girl, but this young man was always trying to engage her, date her, and she was just too smart for him. Again, it's kind of a woman that I would have been cheering on, you know, but what happened with Sheila Kuehl is she went to UCLA, smart woman. It was found out that she was a lesbian through her sorority. They found love letters to another woman. So she was kicked out of the sorority, which of course saddens me. And then she went off to law school, and she was quite the scholar. She was one of the first two women to win moot court, which is a really difficult thing to do. That means you are actually arguing basically an appellate court, and usually it's Supreme Court judges that come in and judge the moot court competition. So very, very brilliant woman. But she had a chip on her shoulder. And that's, I think, why she started the ball rolling in California to move us towards a place where women have no definition anymore. And I find it really shocking that a woman who is a lesbian doesn't understand what a woman is or doesn't care. But she has been quoted in interviews saying that her proudest moment were some of the bills that she passed that equated sex to gender identity. So she knew what she was doing, and she did it anyway. So she started in 1999 with her passage of a bill that would would move from the criminal code, which she put as hate crimes, gender identity. So this was the first movement. Let's say gender identity is, you can't be hateful against somebody because of sex, race, and then gender identity. It's a really slick move because most people will say, let's not discriminate against anybody for the way they look, the way they dress, the way they perceive themselves. And I'm in agreement with that. If a man wants to dress as a woman, he should still be able to get a job. He should still be able to rent an apartment. She pulled on the heartstrings. Very smart move. Gets it over in the penal code. And then she moves that definition over into the education code. So it's a very slick move because people aren't paying attention. So then you get gender identity into the education code. And she ties it to, this is 1999. Here's her argument. Let me see if it sounds familiar to anyone. If we do not teach about transgenderism, same-sex attraction, kids will kill themselves. 1999. Same argument we hear today.
Well,
1990. Yeah.
It's so interesting because as you're explaining all this, it sounds like this is just what Scott Wiener's doing in the Senate, and this is what like Lori Wilson's doing, and all these people now, and people don't realize it didn't just start last year. It didn't just start this year. This has been a very slow moving, thought out plan. And like you said, that's exactly what we're hearing today. If you don't let trans children or trans identifying children transition, they will kill themselves. And I would love to touch more into that because I know you have some information on that. But go ahead and keep going. I just wanted to really make a note.
Yeah, I mean, this is called incrementalism.
Mm-hmm.
You take one bill, you change it ever so slightly, nobody's paying attention. Look, we have jobs. How many people are looking at what the legislative body is doing? They're passing 2,000 bills a year.
Mm-hmm.
They know this. So they quietly, they don't, bring out press conferences for these little bills that they changed a little bit. It's like taking the bite out of, the cake, just one little bite, and then the cake is gone before you know it. And we're at the place now where the cake is gone because this has been going on for so long. So what she did too is she tied it to, she threw in some language, removing the word handicap.
Mm-hmm.
So she made it disabled. Again, we see this when they tie these transgender bills to things that people can get behind. They tie it to abortion, so that way they split Democrats who are really heavy into pro-choice. Then they have to decide: are they more pro-choice or more against the transgenderism? This is a slick move.
Mm-hmm.
This is really, really slick. So they've been doing this for 20, 30 years. They're very, very bright. And so she moved this train along until we really landed in the place where we are today, which happened in, I think, 2016 with AB 1266 passing, saying that anyone can opt into being a woman or a man, and any child can play on any team, use any bathroom, and anybody can change sex. Sex is gender, gender is sex. And that's how we got here. And now we have a very hard task of unwinding all of this. And we have a very difficult task of debunking the suicide narrative, because it's still being used, and people are falling for it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the suicide stuff.
Yeah, let's definitely touch on that because I mean, I even see in my local community, parents are trying to talk to their school board, talk to the principal about how they can kind of make parents more aware of what's going on. And the answers they're always being told is, well, the kids are going to commit suicide. They're going to commit suicide. And the parents don't know how to respond to that because if that's what you're telling me, if that's what you're saying, these stats are showing, how do I respond? But I mean, I know you've done tons of research into this, and that's not the case here. So I would love to dive into this.
Okay, so let's say in 1999, they're doing the suicide stats. They're saying all these kids will commit suicide. Let's be rational here. What are our suicide rates now? In 2020, I think, are the last time they actually have the rates. In 2020, they are at their highest ever. Highest. So we're talking 10 years ago, 10 to 14-year-old suicide rates have increased 40% between 2010 and 2020. 40%. That is a crazy percentage, but that's the real number of completed suicides. So as we push more transgenderism in the schools and confuse more kids and open up their ability to watch more pornography and social media and all of this stuff, what is happening to our suicide rates with our kids? They're going up. Maybe we should change direction. Maybe we should bring parents back into their rightful place, controlling the custody, raising of their children. Same trajectory for kids age 15 to 25. That group, that demographic group also has increased suicidality, completed suicide in the last 10 years. So what we are doing is we are actually creating more suicides. All of this transgenderism is creating confusion with these kids. What transgenderism does at its very essence is it takes a child and it says, child, little boy, you like pink. You play with Barbie dolls. You are trans. The leap there then goes to, you are trans. That means, child, you were born wrong. Everything about you is wrong. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you sit, the shape of your face, the amount of hair on your arms, your genitals, your gesturing, everything about you is wrong. How do you think that child feels? We know how that child feels because all you have to do is tell a kid that they're fat and their self-esteem drops. We're doing one better. We're saying everything about you, child, is wrong. And the teachers are agreeing, and the government is agreeing, and the doctors are agreeing that this child was born wrong. What does that do to the mental capacity of that child? How does that child feel? What do they see when they look in the mirror every morning? They see a wrong person. So we talk about suicide. We are creating suicidal kids because we are not telling them that they are perfect. They are perfect just the way they are. They are perfect the way they were born. They are perfect if they are a girl that likes to play with boys' things, which is regressive in and of itself and nonsensical. So it's a horrifying thing. And yes, so that's why suicide rates are going up. But now let's talk about the arguments that they say, if you don't transition a child, they're going to commit suicide. Now, this is going to sound trivial, but it's sometimes the simple arguments are the most impactful. 15 years ago, kids were not transitioning. 10 years ago, kids were not transitioning. 20 years ago, kids were not transitioning. Where are all the dead bodies buried? Where are all the suicides 15, 20 years ago when kids could not transition? They don't exist. So it's a lie to say that these kids will commit suicide if you don't transition them. I personally work with thousands of parents now across the country, parents like me who believe in biological reality. We did not affirm our children, and there's not one of us that have a dead child. None of our children have committed suicide. I cannot say that for those who have affirmed their kids, sadly. And I don't blame the parents. I mean, some of them I do, but not all of them, because parents are told that. Because when their child comes out as transgender, their child is already in the depths of hell. That child is already believing everything is wrong with me. I'm worthless unless I transition. I am wrong unless I get puberty blockers. I was born wrong. So they're already in the depths of terrible depression. And then the parent takes the child in to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a medical provider looking for help. And that medical provider says to that parent, if you don't support your child's gender identity, if you don't transition them, if you don't get them on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones, they are going to kill themselves. and the parent is desperate. The parent believes the medical community because we were taught to trust the experts. They know. So even when parents have that gut-wrenching belief that this is not true, my child is just going through a really bad time, they hear that suicide threat and they just sign away because they want to keep their child alive. So parents fall for it. And again, I don't blame them because we'll get to my story, but every doctor I took my child to told me the same thing. Even the priest told me, I will have a dead daughter instead of a live son. So you are pushed. So now let's talk about the kids that transition and what their prognosis is for actual suicide. There's a study being funded by the National Institution of Health. This study is now on its second year. The study has the 4 largest pediatric gender clinics involved. So you have Boston, UCSF, Children's Hospital in LA, and I'm going to forget the one in Chicago. Sorry, I can't remember their name. But they are involved, and this is a bevy of doctors. You've got psychiatrists, you've got endocrinologists, so-called experts. These are, Boston brought this garbage to our country. So you have the best of the best doctors in gender. You have parents who are supporting their child's gender identity. These kids in this study were actually even vetted for severe mental health issues. So they took out the kids that were already suicidal and they didn't put them in the study. They had 315 kids in the study for the first year. 2 of them have committed suicide. That is an over 40%, a rate that's 40% higher than the national population of kids. 2 out of 315 in the best setting to transition these kids, unfortunately, ended their lives once they started on cross-sex hormones. So I ask, is this gender affirmative care or is this gender killing care? Is this child killing? Because that's what's happening. Nobody reports on that. And then the kicker, this is the crazy part. This NIH study, guess what they stopped tracking? Suicide. They don't like the data. So they're not tracking it anymore because they don't want anyone to know that these kids are more likely to commit suicide as they transition. My daughter told me that she was going to commit suicide because that's what trans kids do. Mm-hmm. These kids, teenage suicide is a social contagion. We know this. We have this data on this. When a child commits suicide in a high school setting, you don't celebrate the child because you get more kids thinking that they should commit suicide also. We know this. We're somehow forgetting this. And all of these groups that are protecting kids, Trevor Project, teachers, school districts, politicians, they keep saying suicide, suicide, suicide. Do you think these kids aren't hearing this? Of course they are. So they take it inside and they say, well, I'm going to commit suicide anyway, because that's what I see on the internet. That's what I'm told is I'm going to commit suicide. So when they have a bad day, that's what they do. Denmark has a 40-year look back study on people who have transitioned. It's a 3.5 times higher percentage of people post-transition who commit suicide than the regular population. The other side likes to argue, well, that's because it's discrimination. Well, that doesn't work in Denmark. Denmark is one of the most progressive countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're not killing themselves because discrimination. They're killing themselves post-transition because it did not resolve their mental health issues. It did not make their lives better. Same thing in Sweden. Sweden has a look back of 30 years. The percentage of people committing suicide post-transition, post-surgery, is 19 times higher than the general population. So these are the real suicide numbers. The suicides happen post-transition. Nobody wants to report on those because it's a bad narrative for them. Or they just change the narrative and say, oh, it's because people are mean to them. People don't accept them. It's not the case. They can't find partners. They realize that they have hurt their bodies irreversibly and they cannot have a family. Some of these people end up in excruciating pain by putting testosterone in a female body where it doesn't belong. Really harmful things happen to female bodies. All sorts of atrophy. Men wake up, when they're 25 after they have removed their genitals and realize they have no sexual pleasure. They will never have any sexual pleasure. They will not be able to find a partner. They can't get any of this stuff back.
And hearing you say all this, you would think, okay, well, shouldn't it be common sense that we're going the wrong direction? Shouldn't doctors be turning us back around and saying, here's what's happening? And what I don't think a lot of people realize is the money scheme for doctors behind this, and how once you start transitioning someone, you end up with a lifelong patient. And now you have someone constantly coming in, and you would think, why would the doctors not try to reroute this and turn it back? But in reality, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, they're financially benefiting from this situation.
Yeah, so there's two things going on. So you have the gender clinics that are tied to these hospitals, and we talked about John Money. I need to go back there. John Money started the gender clinic at Johns Hopkins, and once it was revealed, years later, that his experiment failed and failed miserably, Johns Hopkins removed the gender clinic from the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a few years ago, they added it back. Why do you think they added it back? Because it brings in gobs of money. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there was one pediatric gender clinic in the whole of the United States. Now there are over 300 because there is money to be made. I know there's a video with the Daily Wire where they have a Tennessee doctor at Vanderbilt talking about how much money can be made in transitioning kids. A breast removal is $10,000 to $20,000, but it doesn't stop there, because as you can hear with Chloe Cole's testimony, she had her double mastectomy, I think it's now 4 years ago, and she's still having problems with her chest, and nobody knows how to fix it. It's still oozing. And so it's not just $20,000 to get the breasts removed. It now starts a whole cascade of redos and fixes and going in and out of the doctor's office trying to get it fixed. Facial surgery is $100,000. Shaving, you have just a plethora of medical interventions now, shaving the trachea, fashioning a vagina out of a penis is not an inexpensive surgery, and it's very complicated. It's not one and done. These patients are going back in and back in and back in because what they're creating is a wound in the human body that naturally wants to heal itself. And so it's going to keep healing itself. Very strange things happen in these, I don't mean to be gross, but in these surgeries, but very odd things happen. Hair grows internally. They call it popcorning or corning because the body is trying to heal and it makes all these scars. These are horrific surgeries, and there's money to be made, and they're making money off of people who are mentally unwell. Take an autistic kid, trick them into believing that they can change into something else, and you now have a child that is connected to the medical leash for life. Even when the child grows up and detransitions, they no longer can produce hormones. So they get them on the front, they get them on the back. And if anybody ever wants to really take a deep dive and look at, who wrote the American Academy of Pediatrics policy, Jason Rafferty. Jason Rafferty works where? In a gender clinic, of course. Most of the people at the highest echelon that are pushing this, they are the ones making the money from this. The other doctors, the doctors who know that this is wrong, they are fearful. And I have no sympathy for them. Zero. So you may lose your job if you speak up. Speak up anyway. But yeah, there's huge money to be made. One can invest in this. You can invest in mutilating people's bodies. There's an online hormone purveyor called Plume. They got funded by individual investors, mostly here in California, $25 million. It's a $1.5 billion industry. Like, you can get great returns on this. You can make money off of body parts. I mean, if we put this in the realm of, selling people's kidneys, would people stop? Because that's what we're doing. We're selling girls' breasts. We're removing them. And then what does it cost to try to get some kind of fake breast put on? And does it work? It doesn't work. There's no skin left. Yeah, so there's money. Lots and lots of money changing hands. And I'm going to get a little bit deep divey. But ESGs. You know what ESGs are?
Yes.
Yeah. So ESGs is a big part of this: environmental, social, and governance. And companies can buy a higher ESG score, and this is how they get better investors. Environmental, they don't do the environmental because that's really expensive to change their company to not be a bigger polluter. So they don't do the E. Social is really inexpensive. Social is pushing the transgender agenda, donating money to a pride festival, making sure that all your employees are well versed in transgenderism. Add to your insurance policy that you'll cover all of the transgender medicine for kids and for adults. That's an easy way to get your boost up there, and that way you can get more investors, and you get a higher rating. And so there's just money, and they're not thinking about what the effect is on humans. It's just an easy way to, get brownie points from the Human Rights Campaign.
Well, and for people that maybe aren't super familiar with ESGs, this isn't just hospitals. It's not things like that. This is what we saw with Bud Light by using Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender person using it. This you're seeing it with Nike. You're seeing this is companies that you shop at and use every day that are trying to increase their ESG scores. And I know there's even been stuff coming out where people will say, I worked for that company. The higher up people don't agree with what's going on with the whole transgender ideology, but they know it will boost their score. So they'll push it anyways. So if people that aren't familiar with this is everyday companies you're shopping at and using at trying to boost that score. And that's why we're seeing it being pushed so much right now.
Yeah, you have Target, Hershey's. I mean, some companies, I just found out that, the soap that I use, Mrs. something. Oh, there's a soap that everybody uses. You get it at, I think, at Trader Joe's, but everybody swears by this soap, and I think 10% of their profits or something goes into the transgender movement. What we're buying is supporting the mutilation of kids, because again, the expensive part of the ESG is environmental. Nobody wants to do that. They don't want to clean up their polluting. And so they pick the social. That's the easiest. G is governance is easy too. Throw in, an African-American woman on your board, and you get points for that. It's quite awful. There's a book called Woke.Inc., and it's written by Vivek, who is running for president. I've read it, and you can actually see how the ESG is pushing this. So there's a whole onslaught of money changing hands. There's huge money too in remember, Medi-Cal is paying for this stuff. Medi-Cal is paying for this. Our tax dollars are paying for this. You and I, every time we pay our taxes, every time we get paid, we're paying for this. It's a huge cabal of money. And then, there's other reasons why they're doing this too. We can get into that if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm loving the deep diving into this and everything. But something I do want to touch on is when you choose to stand against this ideology and say, hey, I'm not going to affirm this ideology, I'm going to push against it because we know ultimately that's what's best for children. People like to say, well, you're transphobic. And you recently kind of touched on this at a press conference we were at, just the whole idea of transphobia. And can you just share with those listening why it's not transphobic to stand against this and the whole issue with people using the term transphobia?
Well, we have to define transphobia. So because really the true definition of transphobia is a fear of trans people. An acute fear of them, and a hatred towards trans people. And that's an impossible position for me to have and most people to have, because we don't hate them. We have enormous amount of empathy for them. Many of our children or friends have children that are gender confused. Do we hate these children? Do I hate the trans radical activists that attack me? I don't. I know how they got there. I know that they got tricked. And I have an enormous amount of sorrow for them and love. We always, when we have these speaking engagements, and I don't know if you saw this, and it may not be true, but we always have one person standing aside who looks like they're gender confused, and they're listening. And I want them to know that they are always welcome. We welcome everyone back. We welcome parents who have put their children on puberty blockers, and we don't judge them. We understand. We understand that they got tricked. So no, there's not hate. Again, do I think that trans people should not have jobs? Of course not.
Mhm.
Do I think that they should be harmed? No. Made fun of? No. None of these things. I'm hoping that they realize that they are loved for really who they are, not who they are trying to become or what they are trying to become. There is no transphobia in this group.
Mhm.
And it's just an easy mantra to throw out. Just like, I've been called homophobic, transphobic, a white nationalist. I voted for same-sex marriage.
Mhm.
I've been called right wing. I'm irreligious. I've been called, all sorts of names. All of this is nonsense because it's the only way that they can try to counteract really the cogent and logical arguments, which is that nobody's born in the wrong body. It's as simple as that. Nobody's born this way. Nobody.
Mhm. So I think what's interesting to note is what we're seeing today is the stats have come out that show when a child is going through puberty and they're gender confused or they're thinking they want to identify as a different gender, if the adults in their lives, so their teachers, their parents, and the community around them, don't affirm that they were born in the wrong body, but instead affirm who they really are and talk to them that puberty is uncomfortable and like everyone kind of goes through those uncomfortable stages of growing and through those teenage years that over 90% of them never transition or move forward with this. And I think that really goes back to these children that are going through this dysphoria need to be affirmed that they were born in the right body and that they are who they are.
You're absolutely correct. So there's countless studies.
Mhm.
They're across the board that when a child is gender confused and you let them go through their natural puberty and the adults in the room affirm that they are actually a female and actually a male, what they are biologically born to be and are and can never change, these children come out the other side being comfortable in their bodies. Now, the corollary is also true. So, if a parent and the adults in the child's life affirm the gender identity, these children continue to have that confusion into adulthood. And they are then most likely to start a medical process. So, that social transition piece is so important. And that is why we are fighting so hard to get schools to stop keeping secrets from parents about the gender confusion of the kids in school so that parents can make that decision whether to socially transition their child or not. And knowing that whatever decision they make, if they make the decision to affirm the gender identity, what the outcome's going to be. If they make the decision to not affirm, what the outcome will be. And so that's how powerful social transition is. And if we again go back into, history, if a parent tells a child that the child is stupid, and there are studies on this, you are stupid, you're an idiot, that child grows up believing that they're stupid and they're an idiot. And that child does not flourish and that child does not get higher education because they swallow that and they believe it. That's the power of the adults telling a child one thing versus another. We know this. This is not new. This has been for eons. And so it really is important for parents and teachers not to affirm this gender identity because you're actually providing a medical intervention, teachers. You're not neutral. You're actually pushing this child to go get her breasts removed. to sterilize herself. They need to know that they are not just a spectator. They are doing this. And there's another story. I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to get his name wrong, but there's a doctor in the UK. His first name, I think, is Kareem. People can look this up. But he tried an experiment. He had people who had transitioned meet and have a support group with people who were thinking of transitioning. And the result of those support groups was those who thought of transitioning did not. Once they actually met with those who transitioned and got the real stories of what it's like. And these kids are not given the real stories. They are looking on TikTok and seeing, these fabulous looking people who have transitioned that, of course, are all made up, right? They look great. They have their filters. And they think, I can be that too. That is why Bruce Jenner is so dangerous. Because people look at him and say, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to be on the cover of a magazine. It's just not true. It's giving a false sense of what actually can happen. Same idea. Again, let's go back to reality. A kid growing up saying, I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. I'm going to be just like my hero. How many people actually achieve that? How many children actually achieve the red carpet? When they transition and look like perfect replicas of women, like Dylan Mulvaney? How many Dylan Mulvaneys are there? So it's really dangerous because kids will look up to this. They'll see, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name. He talks against this, but he's super wealthy. He's got millions and millions of followers. Do as I say, not as I do. Doesn't resonate with kids. It's dangerous.
Well, I think it's the same thing that, like, when I was younger, what it was more is you would see the supermodels on Instagram, or you would see the Megan Foxes of the world, and it's like, how do I become like that pretty, and how do I look like that, and all that. And like half the time they don't tell you those photos are edited like crazy to make the woman's body look shaped differently, or she's went and got a bunch of lip work done and all these different things done. And so now what we're seeing is current teenagers, instead of being, how do I look like the hottest girl ever, the hottest guy ever, they're seeing, like you said, the Dylan Mulvaneys or the people, the Bruce Jenners, where they're getting lots of money from this and they're on the covers of magazines and they're thinking, how can I achieve that? And it's just not real. It's the same way, like, I'm never going to look like Megan Fox. That's just reality. Like, these children are never going to be the Dylan Mulvaneys. And I mean, Dylan Mulvaney can do his day 27 of being a girl, day 30, like all he wants, but he's not showing the also probably tons of negative side effects that's happening to him. And I think that's the harmful side effects of social media nowadays, is you're not seeing the reality of what's happening. You're just seeing the good side, and the children are very much latching on to all of those ideas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And all of this is not new. This is all a social contagion. This happened, I'm going to age myself, of course, but Lady Di. Lady Di was the young, beautiful princess all over magazines. And then it came out that she was bulimic. How many girls then became bulimic? Thousands and thousands of girls. There's also a story of 90210, that show where it was all these beautiful, beautiful people, beautiful boys, beautiful girls, living in Southern California with their convertibles. And that show went over to an island where beauty was considered to be heavy women.
Mm.
And so the standard is large women. And when that show got over there, all these women started having eating disorders. Happened in Japan also. This wanting to be the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, we had the heroin models, the supermodels who were heroin addicts. Well, we had an explosion of heroin addicts. So we're having the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're telling kids that they are not perfect just the way they are. And the internet is a huge, huge contributor to this. If I am not Megyn Kelly, I must be a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be better off as a man. And we're telling butch lesbians, girls that would just grow up to be butch lesbians, that you're not okay. You're not okay to be a masculine woman. It means you must be a man, and you must transition to be a facsimile of a man. And these are really wretched, horrible things that we're doing to kids. They argue the other side, the kindness, they pull on heartstrings. Again, going back to 1999, all these heartstrings, these pulling on kindness and loving. And it's kind to tell somebody that they're perfect the way they are. That's the ultimate kindness. That's the ultimate love. And that gets lost in the shuffle. It really does.
Yeah. And so I do want to get into your personal experience with this, but before we touch on that, I know there's a lot of people that are listening and they think, okay, well, we can try to switch the way things are being portrayed on social media. We can try to talk to people differently, but how do we change what's happening, especially California law? It's already law, it's too late. But recently you've worked on putting together some initiatives. And so can you kind of explain that and what that process is and what that means, at least here for California, that there is opportunities to go back on the law?
Yes, and it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I say this a lot. I am a Democrat. I voted for all these people. I voted for all these things. I didn't pay attention. I had no idea what was happening. It's not too late. And every person has power. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be anything. You just need to sometimes pick up the phone and make phone calls to your legislator. There's really simple actions that everyone can do, because you're one person and then 10 more people, 20 more people, 30 more people are doing this. So we can reverse this course, and we will. I guarantee you we will. We've seen it in other states. Reality is coming back. It's gotten so absurd that people can't define what a woman is. It's just absurd. So we can unwind this, and we need to unwind this. But what we're doing in California, which is what we have to do here because the legislature is not listening to us. It's a super majority Democrat, but even some of the Republicans are deciding to sit on their hands or sit on the sidelines. So we, the people, us, regular people, we're going to change it. And we have written 3 ballot initiatives that we're hoping to get on the 2024 ballot. And these initiatives will change California. And what the first one does is will get male bodies out of female sports. This is just basic biology. There's just a slight difference between boys and girls. I'm being facetious. There's a huge difference. Huge. And we know this, and everybody knows this. And anybody who says that there isn't a difference, they need to check into an institution, because that's just not true. Or maybe they need to read a little more. I shouldn't be so harsh. They need to read a little more. Or maybe have a running race with a male or a female, and see what that is. See how they get smoked or crush the other person. It's basic. And then we have a ballot initiative that is would require schools to involve parents when their child is gender questioning at school, and to not do anything to promote social transition of that child without parental consent. So that's another initiative. And our third, which is to stop gender interventions on humans under the age of 18. So they're big initiatives. We need to fund these. You can go to protectkidsca.com to sign up to help get signatures, to donate. But the important part about these three initiatives, if we have 75% of Californians, regardless of religious background or political background, are for these initiatives. So if we get them on the ballot, we're going to win. And if we win here in California, so goes the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in another state, you still should be promoting our initiatives here.
Mm-hmm.
What we do in California goes elsewhere. Even if your state has laws right now that prevent gender interventions on children under the age of 18, do not rest on your laurels, because if we don't kill it here, it's just going to come back out. We have to yank it from the root, and its roots are here in our golden state.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just circumventing. We're circumventing the California government, and we have a right to do it. Democracy requires individual participation. Anyone can do this. And to those people who are hesitant, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my friends. Lose your friends.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get new ones. I have. Lose your job. You're going to get a new job. You have to sleep at night. And if you can sleep at night knowing that you are participating in the erasure of women, the harms to women and children, and the removal of healthy body parts, well, then don't join us.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect that you believe what we believe. So you have to do something. Even if you send in a check for $25, you're doing something. And everyone needs to do something, because if everyone does something, it's over. Don't we want to end it? I want to end it. I want to go back to my regular life. I want to go back to reality. I want to go back to knowing that when I walk into a bathroom, I'm safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so these initiatives, what we're gonna need, like you said, donations. You can go to the Protect Kids CA online, and then if you're listening and you feel like you want to either donate or you want to help collect signatures, either visit the website or you can reach out to me on the podcast, and I'll connect you with how to get the signatures. That process hasn't started just yet, but as soon as it will, we'll need people getting signatures. You can donate already. So please reach out to me and I'll help connect you to the website and the best way to go about this, because as Erin said, everyone across the nation should be supporting and pushing for these three initiatives to pass in California, because as California goes, so goes the nation.